So we're going to look and see how cells divide and start off with looking at two different types of reproduction. Cells can be asexual, and think of like a pen or a book. This means only one parent is giving its DNA. Or they can be sexual reproduction, which means two parents are contributing their DNA. And in asexual reproduction, because only one parent's contributing their DNA, there's not going to be a lot of differences. In fact, they're usually identical to the parent unless there's a mutation. In sexual reproduction, since we have two different parents contributing, we're going to have a lot of variation in the new individual or the zygote. And we're going to look at how this process is a little different over the next week. In cell division, it makes a big difference if we're talking about prokaryotic cells that do not have a nucleus. Through asexual reproduction, binary fission specifically, bacterial or prokaryotic cells simply make a copy of its DNA. It gets bigger and then it splits into two identical cells. So this is binary fission. If there is a nucleus, like in eukaryotic cells, it's a lot more complicated. And so you can see here, because of the nucleus and other organelles, we're going to go through a lot of different steps to be able to make a new cell. We have to first get ready for it. Then we have to make copies of the DNA. Then we have to make copies of the nucleus. And finally, we can make copies of the cell itself. On average, as you're sitting there, about 25 million new cells divide every second, and that leads to about 2 trillion new cells a day. And so we're going to look at that process as you're sitting there, how your cells are dividing. Now, in order to make sure we don't lose DNA is tightly wound or packed into these bundles called chromosomes. And during one of the phases, they actually make an exact copy. And since they're all tightly bundled, it's basically how they stay secure and we don't lose things in the nucleus for all of the DNA that we have. If we look at it in a little bit more detail, each of those sides are called chromosomes, sister chromatids, where they're still attached. That's a centromere. Portions of the DNA that code for a protein are called genes. And we can see here, this is a pretty good analogy looking at how we have the whole cell and then the chromosome and then parts of the chromosome and how they kind of relate this to all the way down to the DNA, the A's, T's, G's, and C's, people, cities, states, country, and then the whole earth. If you want to kind of compare the letters that make up DNA all the way through the cell and making that analogy. Humans have two main types of cells. They have body cells or somatic cells, and they have reproductive cells or gametes. And these are going to be very different. Your body cells, like your hair, your skin, your heart, your muscle, your blood cells, all of those have two sets of chromosomes, or they're diploid, two in here, because we get one of these from our mom and one set from our dad. Reproductive cells, however, are haploid. And so these are called gametes. And in females, they're the egg. In males, they're the sperm. But they have to have only half the number of chromosomes. And so we call them haploid, which sounds like half. And in humans, gametes have 23 chromosomes. We can actually look at a picture of chromosomes from humans. And this picture, one of your vocab words, is a karyotype. And basically, karyotypes show us if there's any type of chromosomal mutation or abnormality. So you have to kind of know what you're looking for. So a couple more vocabulary words. If you notice each one of these pairs, they're pretty much the same size as the other one that's next to it. Even though the ones down here are very small and here they're a lot taller or longer. There we say that these are homologous. And if you notice, the banding patterns are also similar. And that's because whether you get the chromosome from your mom or your dad, the type of gene that you'll find in a certain spot will be the same. So it may be blue eye color from one person and brown eye color from the other, but you'd find it at the exact same spot on the exact same chromosome. Chromosome pairs 1 through 22 are called autosomes, and the last pair, 23, are called the sex chromosomes. Now that you have a little bit of background on that, we're ready to look at the cell cycle and actually look at what happens during cell division, and specifically during interphase and cell division, mitosis, and cytokinesis. So that's what we'll start with in the next video.